America has changed a lot in the course of only 15 years. In the year 1800, the population wasn't even a million. Over the course of 50 years, the population has more than tripled to equal about 3 million. The number of states has also increased from only 16 to 31, almost doubling. The reason that this is important is because there's the debate between whether or not to make the new states free states or slave states. While the South wants them to be slave states, the North wants them to be free states. Around the years of the 1850s, something called the American Renaissance happened. This was an explosion of literary and cultural development during this time. Many new literary works such as The Scarlet Letter and especially Uncle Tom's Cabin depicted the horrors of slavery, and to a lot of the Northerners, it turned them into abolitionists and made them want to get rid of slavery. All in all, America in 1850, tensions have been growing and growing ever since 1800.
The year 1850 opened the most political crisis in the United States had ever known. The discussion of slavery is a large topic over the United States, causing division between the northern and southern states. With the Compromise of 1850, there are three separate compromises. The first compromise being that California became a free state. The second was Texas giving up land to New Mexico so they can pay off a very large sum of debt that they had. And three, slave trade of District of Columbia was ended abruptly.
The Fugitive Slave Law was enforced in the late 1850s, allowing slave owners to capture more slaves, causing 30,000 to 40,000 to flee to Canada. Those who protected the slaves were punished. Northerners would later protest heavily, knowing that slavery is wrong. A Maryland slave owner was killed when he attempted to capture a runaway slave in rural Pennsylvania. This became known as the Christiana Riot.
In the election of 1852, General Winfield Scott was nominated over current President Fillmore. This nomination caused many Whigs to get alienated from Congress, with few being elected again. Franklin Pierce was elected in 1853, and this showed strength of Democratic parties in northern states. Pierce started his own administration, but was forced to abandon it due to embarrassment. The complicity between the Pierce administration and pro-slavery expansionists was foolhardily and lost the northern goodwill.
In 1854, a man by the name of Stephen Douglas introduced the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This act proposed opening the northern part of the Indian Territory to American settlers under the principle of popular sovereignty. The Kansas-Nebraska Act also pressed the further progress of the Transcontinental Railroad to California. Douglas wanted the railroad to end in Illinois, but that would mean that the land west of Iowa and Missouri had to be organized into territories. He needed the support of Democrats who wouldn't allow it unless it accepted slavery. Douglas thought that the South would support it because of popular sovereignty provision, and then the North would support it because the railroad took mostly a northern route. The bill passed, which strained the political parties because the Southern Whigs and Democrats agreed on it, and the Northern Whigs rejected it entirely. It greatly damaged the Democrats. In 1854, Northern Democrats lost 2/3 of their seats, allowing the Southern Democrats to become the dominant voice in Congress. A storm of protests rose everywhere in the North, and over 300 anti-Nebraska riots occurred during congregational consideration of the bill, and that anger never left.
Treaties were concluded with Indian tribes including Kickapoos, Shawnees, Sacs, and Foxes to relocate to other reservations.
Others, however, like the Delawares, Wees, and Iowas, agreed to sell their lands to the whites. Other Indians, such as the Cheyennes and Sioux, kept the western part of Kansas Territory, today Colorado.
After the treaties were signed, white settlers, pro and anti-slavery, flooded in. Because of the different views in Kansas, there was a lot of fighting, and Kansas became a bloody battleground, now referred to as Bleeding Kansas.
One such event was described as
Towns are terrorized, stores robbed, homesteads burned. North and South are polarized. Neither side will back down.
The violence in Kansas was due to the breakdown of the two-party system.
Whigs left a political vacuum that was filled by one of the strongest bursts of nativism, anti-immigrant feeling in American history. This new feeling drew young white-collar and skilled blue-collar Whigs to a new political party called Know-Nothings, or the American Party. They shifted their support with characteristics of the Whigs to form a new party called the Republican Party. The Republicans attracted the economic core of the Whigs, and they opposed slavery and the expansion of slavery. There was a huge election in 1856 between the Democrats with their candidate James Buchanan, the New Republican Party with their candidate John C. Fremont, and the Americans or Know Nothings Party with their candidate Millard Fillmore. Even though the Republicans lost, they got full support from the North, but the South viewed their existence as attack on their vital interests. Even still, they were at a rapid rise, and it posed a threat to national unity.
Dred Scott was a born slave who married a slave and they had kids, and he later sued for freedom.
And the Southern Chief Justice, Roger Taney, declared slaves as property and black people not as citizens.
Territory split between free soil and pro-slavery groups. Free soil voters boycotted the convention to write a state constitution to get Kansas approved as a state.
Buchanan, which was the new president, supported the pro-slavery terms that made the Lecompton Constitution.
Stephen Douglas opposed the Lecompton Constitution, therefore Kansas voted against and was not admitted as a state.
With the Panic of 1857, there was new technology being created, and that caused businesses to go out of business and people to sell all their stocks.
It was less harmful to the South than it was to the North.
With John Brown raiding on Harper's Ferry, he had 22 men of both white and black, and he attacked to form a slavery uprising.
They got defeated by the U.S. Marines because they didn't have an escape route and they didn't have time to tell the slaves, and that later led to John Brown being hung.
In conclusion, the coming crisis of the national unity was split between the northern and southern states in declaring their views of slavery. Because of this national disagreement, there were events that led to the idea of a civil war. This is a key in identifying major causes of the Civil War. The most pressing is unity. By noting these facts, we can learn from our mistakes, identify rising tensions, and ultimately prepare us for the Civil War.
And now the North has seemed to I don't even know the word.
You